Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining us. Today we're going to be continuing the series front wheel drive improvements. We're going to be doing a DIY alignment on this Polo. It's just gone through a recent refresh. It's got a brand new engine. It's been cleaned up quite a lot. To do that, there's quite a few things we need to do. Stay with us. First of all, I want to take the time to thank everybody for watching the front wheel drive driving techniques and front wheel drive setup videos. It's really helping this channel grow. I'm glad that you guys can take info that I've learned and shared with everyone and use it on your own cars and in any way possible. So that's the aim of this video, is really to show you how you guys can do your own DIY alignment without taking it to an alignment shop. Or if you're at the track and you want to change a couple of things and maybe you understand that the car needs a little less camber, a little more, a little less toe, a little more toe, whatever the case may be, you guys can do it there at the track by yourself. So thank you so much. Let's get into it. To do this, you're going to need a jack, tire pressure gauge, some fishing line, some spark plugs, some floor tiles. These are about 1 mil thick. You're going to need a decent camber gauge. I've tried to do this with the spirit level marked out, where you put it up against the wheel, you measure the distance, but and then you use geometry to calculate the camber, but it's not that accurate. So I would say if you're going to be at the track and there's varying tracks and different tires in that, invest in a proper camber gauge. Here I have the smart camber gauge. I got this quite a few years ago, and it's worked really well for me. I've just replaced the batteries and I've had it 7 years, 8 years or something. You're going to need 2 aluminium poles. Okay, so now these poles are curtain rails. So I just went down to my local builder's warehouse or Home Depot or whatever you're using. These are about 20 mils, 19 mils in their thickness. Doesn't really matter. You just need 2 aluminium poles. Could be stainless. You need about 2 meters of clear tubing, some duct tape, and a bucket with some water in it. I think I'm going to use a trestle or a measuring device like a ruler or whatever, but I'll show you exactly how that all works. First things first, we need to mark out where the wheels are. Got a spasm in my finger. So what we have to do is we have to level the floor, or level the car rather. If you're building a house and you throw concrete down, there's always variations in heights. And it doesn't matter how much you try and level the floor, it'll never be perfect. When you're doing corner weights, or when you're doing camber, you need the car 100% level. And that's between the 2 wheels, or the back wheels, or across the car. Reason for that is we calibrate the camber gauge. I'll show you how we do that. And the camber gauge is calibrated to 100% zero. So whatever reading you're going to apply to the car will be based on a level plane. If your floor is not level, or if the car is not level, then it's going to give you an inaccurate reading. What we're going to do is we're going to use those floor tiles to shim each wheel up. So first things first, we are going to mark where the wheels are, and then we're going to measure the difference in height, and we're going to use the floor tiles to basically add. We'll take the highest point and then add the rest, so that it's kind of the same. So now we have to take the car out, because now we're going to measure the different heights. Alright, so now we can see exactly where our tiles would need to go, so that's how it would sit. Okay, so I have the bucket over there, trestle here. You can also use a steel rule. we're going to try and get the water to a point that we can take a measurement from and then mark it. So that means I need to employ the siphon technique. Okay, that's looking good. We could possibly drop the bucket down, but so if I lower the bucket, it's gonna raise this level. So that's why we want the bucket on the jack, so we can adjust the height. But in this case, we don't need to because it's giving us an accurate reading. So the idea with all of this is to find out which one is the highest, which one is the lowest, etc. So the highest point out of the four corners on your floor, you can't change, but the lowest point you can change. So we have to start somewhere, and then we have to figure out which is the highest point. So I'm starting front left, and we're just going to mark the water level on the pipe right there, and then we'll move to front right and then see how it changes. Alright, so the water level mark is right here. So if I raise the trestle to kind of illustrate that the floor is higher, the water level will go down. And likewise, if the trestle is lower, the water level will go up. So front left, we know what it is, it's a baseline. Let's move and see what we get. So in this case, the water mark is higher, meaning that this trestle is Alright, looks like we have a winner. The left rear. This is the highest point because it is way below the other bar. Let me mark this on the tube. The bottom line is where the water mark is. So if we have to lift this up, you see how the water mark drops. So the rear left corner is the highest point on the floor. So now we're going to go to the front left, shim it, front right, shim it, so that all kind of the water level meets that bottom line. Okay, I was looking at my readings and I was getting inconsistent readings, and I was thinking, why is this happening? This doesn't make sense. But yeah, you can see. So what has happened is that pipe, I've taped it up there to keep it in one place, but the actual pipe has come out the water there. So there we go, you can see it's out the water. So just keep an eye on that. What I'm going to do now is just add another piece of duct tape to the bottom here to make sure that this pipe is always underwater. I've added one tile. That's all it took, one tile pretty much. Sometimes the tiles are too thick. If you really want to get as accurate as possible, you could get like pieces of aluminium plate or something thinner than this. For this, I'm just using the tiles. 5 tiles. 5. It's about 7 mils. So if you take a reading, if you zero your camber gauge, it's going to give you an inaccurate reading when you do your camber this side. Three tiles. So there we have it. The leveling is done. Rear left took 0 tiles. Front left took 1 tile. Front right took 5 tiles. So we'll measure that now in terms of height. And right rear took 3 tiles. Okay, also something to note is just make sure that you keep the tile pretty much in the center of where the tape marks are, so that obviously it's in the center of the tire. So let's move on to the next step. Now we need to get the car in here, get it up on the tiles, and then we can zero the camber gauge. So the process is make sure your tire pressures are pretty much at what you would run them at. Let's get to that. Let's do the camber first, then we'll do the ride height, and then we're going to do the toe. Alright, so what you want to do is you want to try and get the steering wheel center. I centered the wheel. Because we've changed the hubs, the wheels are running a lot more camber and then therefore towing in, because the steering rod is on the back. So the more you lean it in, the more it's going to tow in. I mean, it's so excessive. You can see it's quite visual. There you can see how much this thing is towing in. Next step, I've got to get my extremely large socket out to loosen this nut. Now, this car has had the turrets modified. Okay, this was done many years ago. This was to allow for a longer shock, because the shocks we could get at the time were bottoming out. So this allowed for a longer shock. So effectively, we're going to have to loosen this to bring it back to kind of get it in line with more or less what it is. The track we're driving at, there's more right-hand corners and they're quite fast. So we'll probably run close to 4.5 on the front left, and then probably, so that's this side, front left, 4.5, around 4.5, and then on the front right we could run less, could run about 4 to assist with braking, but it all depends on what the car's asking for. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're just going to run 4.5 there, 4.5 there. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to calibrate and basically zero the camber gauge. So it's got a calibrate function. So you calibrate it in one position, you turn it around, and you calibrate it in the exact opposite position. And what that does is it takes the sensor inside and it calculates the difference between the two and the zeros it according to that. So as long as the car is level, it'll give you an accurate reading. So let's do that right now. Hold that in, it says calibrate 1. Turn it around. Hold it in, calibrate 2. And there we go. That should be 100% zero. So the next step now, measure what the camber is on the car, and then we can pull it back based on what we need it to be. So we do this by using these tabs, and you want to locate the gauge on the wheel in a place that's going to be consistent across your measurements. That's saying 8.2 degrees. That is crazy. 6.7. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen the top and pull back the camber. So what I did there is I took load off of the shock and the tower by using the jack, and that effectively stopped the shock from pushing in, and then I could pull it out, and I've just nipped it up a little bit. We're going to measure now, see where we get. So it's still on 7 degrees. I need to pull it back some more. 5.2. It's always a good idea to look at the car and kind of get a visual, use a logical test. Does it make sense? Does it look like 5 degrees? 4.5 on the dot. So that's perfect. Now I have to tighten this nut, but what's inevitably going to happen is it's going to move. So I just have to be very careful how I tighten it up. Do a sanity check. 4.5 on the money. So if you just visually look at the difference compared to what it was, it's a huge difference. That's also why you do camber first, because as you adjust the camber, the toe will change. So you must do the camber first and then you do the toe. On to the other side. Alright, battery died, so we're on the GoPro. Let's get onto this side. Oh, come on. Ryan! Okay, man, I'm busy shooting the video as we speak. You'll be on the video. You see? The owner's on the phone here. You're talking to the camera. What's up? Okay, okay. Ciao, bye. So again, we just tighten it enough so we can 4.9, so we need 0.4 of a degree. Again, do a visual. Does it look like 5? Yes, it does. 4.7, a bit more. 4.5. On the money, on the money. So it's moved so much because we've made a substantial mechanical change to the knuckle, as I explained before. You're not normally going to have to make these kinds of changes. You'll only do it when there's some massive change. So generally when you change between circuits, the camber will change here and there depending on the amount of load. Is it a very tight twisty track or is it a really fast track? Swartkops we're setting it up for now is quite a tight twisty track, although I'm not racing the car. I'm just going to run it in and do a basic shakedown because so much has changed on the car. I'm not trying to set any lap records or anything. It's just a matter of putting heat cycles through the car, making sure everything's working. It's got brand new brakes, bedding in the brakes, making sure the car is doing what it's supposed to. Also putting heat cycles through the motor, through the bearings, bedding in the rings, and then after that we'll drain the oil. It's going for a dyno. So at the moment we've done the front. We need to check the camber on the back. So the camber on the back on this car, because it has a solid rear axle, how you have to set the camber and the toe is by using these shims. It's by using shims like these. So effectively you loosen off the bolts and you can put the shims in at the front to kind of move the wheel out. So we would put the shim in at the front. Depending on, in stock form they toe in. So then we would shim it kind of to 0 or 1 mil toe out. We're measuring in millimeters. To 2 mils depending on what setup you run. And then you'd also put an extra one at the bottom to add camber, depending on the original setup of this car. So this car has already been shimmed. Now it's generally with these cars you shim it and you leave it. However, some circuits does require different setups, like a faster circuit, it's all driver dependent, and it's also all dependent on how close you are to the front of the field. I'm going to do a whole video on that, basically level of effort required as you get close to the front. Effectively what we're going to do is just measure the rear in terms of camber, and then we'll box the car and do the toe. Okay, so this is sitting on about 2 degrees. It's about 1.6. Alright, so that's pretty close to what I would normally run anyway. We're not going to set any lap records here. This is purely for running the car in. Alright, so I have my curtain rail. I've got my trestles placed pretty much in line with the wheel. It actually doesn't matter as long as it's on the inside of the wheel. Both sides. I've put a bolt basically, or a cap screen there, to make sure that they don't fall over. You'll see on the professional race cars they actually attach them to the bumper. This is a way you can do it with stuff that you're going to have anyway at the circuit, like axle stands, tracings, or whatever you want to call it. Cut a slit into the aluminium. I basically measured the center of the pole, cut those lines either side of the center line, basically equidistant. Okay, and I've done that on both poles. Once I place that pole there, and I do the same in the front, what we're then going to do is we're going to use the fishing line. We're going to basically tie it out right there, send it to the front, tie it around the same cut mark on the aluminium pole. So the cut marks have to be equidistant, or it has to be the same space. So if it's 1.3 meters on the back, it needs to be 1.3 meters on the front. That means that the lines are going to be exactly straight once you center this. So you'll see what I mean. So once the lines are on, we're going to measure from the center of the wheel on either side and box it out so that the line is exactly the same smaller than that gap. Let's say this is 50 or 150 millimeters and this is 153 millimeters, then that means that your wheel is towing in 3 millimeters. So whatever you're trying to set, it needs to be set that gap. So we're working in millimeters. The target I'm going for is about 1 mil toe out, 1 to 2 mils toe out here. So let's see, we've changed a lot, so I don't expect it to be anywhere close. So we're sitting on 151, now we're way out. So we are 146, 145. So that's 6 mils toe out. So we need to bring the wheel in more or less 5 mils. 140, 149. Okay, so this is about close as damn it. So this side is perfect. I'm going to leave this side. It's that side that needs a lot of change. So now when you do this, you're going to have to recenter the wheel on the strings. So just keep that in mind. It is quite a process. So if you remember, it was 5 mils toe out. Okay. So what we have to do is the tie rod end. We adjust the tie rod end. The tie rod end is on the back of the wheel. So we're going to screw it out, which will push the wheel in. If it's on the front, you obviously do the opposite. Just be careful with the number of turns. So that was 1.5 turns. Let's see what that does. I loosen the handbrake. What we do is we just rock it backwards and forwards a bit. Make sure the steering is still straight. And then we recenter the strings. 149, 148. So that means we have 1 mil toe in. It's too much, so what I've done is I went 1.5 turns out. So I think we need to go like 1/4 of a turn. $148. So that is 0 toe. So we need another 1/4 of a turn. 147, 148 on the money. About 148, about 147 on the money. So obviously after you've done that, you need to go and tighten that lock nut on the tie rod. If you don't, it'll go out. But yeah, as you saw, it's quite a laborious process. It takes time. You have to just be patient, take your time with it, and practice it at home a few times. Sometimes you can end up chasing the string, so if something is out, that's why it's always sometimes good to do it with a friend, just so you can bounce off ideas. So then you will need 2 of those steel rules. It also goes a lot quicker, so he can be on that side or she can be on that side, you on this side, and then you kind of center it a lot quicker and whatever. It's also good to mark it down. I've created this setup sheet. There will be a link for this in the description below. You can use this, and basically I log all the information. Your camber, cast, okay, it's not applicable here, toe, ride height, all of that. So if you're doing a bunch of back-to-back testing, then you print out a bunch of these, you go to the track, you log why you changed what in the note section, and then you have a full log of this in your archive, so that you know if we went to a track and for whatever reason the tire was different, whatever, the car needed camber, you changed it and this was the reason. So you always have the log. So it's always good to do this. You do this on your setup, you do this on your set down. So I'm just going to check the rear, and then I think we can pretty much wrap this one up. Okay, so the rear is pretty much within spec. It's between 1 mils and 2 mils out. I sometimes run 0. It all depends on the chassis. How responsive is the chassis? Sometimes older chassis, they're not very responsive. That's because of material fatigue or metal fatigue. So then the guys tend to run with a bit more of an aggressive setup. What we're going to do now is check pressures. 2 bar, way too much for this tire. The reason we're checking pressures is for ride height. On the money, alright. Now, The ride height is supposed to be about 125. It's so hard to tell because of this floor. So you need a really flat floor to check it. Looks like 135. Having said that, these tiles are about 7. So if you take 135 minus 7, that gives you about, so it's about 128, about 130. Can't see, it's so lacquer, but yeah, it's about 130. So I suspect it's because of the difference in the height on the floor that we're getting that kind of reading. What I'm going to do is I'm going to check it. I'm not going to change it here because it's a bit of an unknown. So we need a really flat surface there. So I'm going to check it at Swartkops. They have a scale there. I'll also check my ride height there. So one thing I forgot to mention on ride height, if you're in a controlled series like this car is, then the ride height is specified front. And the reason they do that is because the cars get quicker the lower you push, the lower you go on the ride height. They set the ride height on that bottom, on the wishbone bolt. If you are not ride height limited in the series, there's a fine balance, because if you go too low, then what happens is your wishbone start to do this, and same with your steering arm, it starts to run really low. So you do get like bump steer correction kits, like we're going to do with the Clio, and that does help. So effectively what starts to happen is you start to actually become rear ride height limited, meaning that your spring can only go down so low, because the lower the car is, the lower the center of gravity, the less roll you're going to have because of the geometry of the suspension. If you lower the car to a point where it's as low as it can go on the back, then you lower the front lower, you start to affect the rake of the car. So you'll see in Formula 1 they run really hectic rake. A lot of that has to do with aerodynamics, but in these situations the rake of the car largely affects the stability and the turn-in response. So depending on how the car is set up with the spring rates and the valving and the toe and all of that, you might not want to run super aggressive rake. So you'll get to a point where you can only drop the rear as low as it can go. If you start lowering the front too much, it's going to really start to affect how nervous the car is. And again, there's a balance. There's only so much to be gained from lowering and lowering and lowering. So there's a trade-off. You've got to find that balance, pretty much. What I would say is drop the rear, but till when the tire hits the wheel arch, maybe a little lower, depending on how much purchase you have on the spring retainer. If it's a coilover shock, you'll just feel it out. Then you need to lower the front, get the car kind of level, and look at the wishbones. If the wishbones are sitting like this, then you're going to have a problem. So the wishbones ideally need to be level, or they can be a slight angle, but it doesn't have to be exactly perfect. So anyhow, that's what it takes really to do DIY alignment. We haven't done corner weights. We're obviously going to do that at a later stage, but for this exercise, no, we're not doing that. But anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. That's going to be it. We are pretty much done here. I'm just going to pack it all up. I'm going to get it ready for the test session. I'll do a whole thing on that. That's going to be a separate video. So if you haven't already, go check out the previous videos in this video series. There will be links down below, and there will be links in the corners for this. That's the front wheel drive driving techniques and the front wheel drive basic setup. So if you haven't seen those, go check those out. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. We'll catch you guys next time. Ciao.